r/ProRevenge military husband lied about deployment, so I exposed him in court. The courthouse steps felt like ice beneath my feet as I clutched the manila folder that would either save my children or destroy what was left of my life. Inside were GPS logs, bank statements, and witness photos that proved my husband's Staff Sergeant Marcus Chen had been lying to everyone, including the military, about his 6-month deployment to Afghanistan. He wasn't overseas. He was 20 minutes away, shacked up with his girlfriend in a downtown apartment while I struggled to feed our kids on the reduced support payments meant for deployed spouses. "Sarah, please, think about what you're doing," my mother-in-law whispered behind me, her voice cracking. "Marcus is serving our country." The stress of deployment. I whirled around, my patience finally snapping after months of her guilt trips and manipulation. "Helen, he's not deployed. He never was." The shocked silence from Marcus's family was deafening. His brother David stepped forward, his face flushed with anger. "How dare you question his service while he's risking his life?" "Stop." My voice carried across the courthouse steps with such force that several strangers turned to look. "Just stop with the hero worship for 5 minutes and listen to what I'm telling you." But they wouldn't listen. They never did. For 6 months, I'd been painted as the ungrateful military wife who couldn't handle the sacrifice. The one who complained about money while her brave husband served overseas. Marcus had orchestrated this narrative perfectly, sending fake emails from a forward operating base, posting old photos on social media, even having his buddy make fake phone calls with static and bad connections during family gatherings. The performance was Oscar-worthy. The reality was that he was committing adultery, fraud, and probably half a dozen military violations that could land him in Leavenworth. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus: "Last chance to drop this, Sarah. My CO is already suspicious about your calls. Make me look bad in there and I'll make sure you never see Emma and Jake again. I have friends in family court." My hands trembled as I read his threat. Emma was only 4, Jake barely 2. They asked every night when Daddy was coming home from his mission, and I'd been forced to lie to them because exposing the truth meant going to war with a man who had convinced everyone, including his command, that he was deployed. But last week, I'd gotten the proof I needed. My private investigator had struck gold, GPS data from Marcus's phone showing him at local restaurants, hotels, and his girlfriend's apartment every single day for the past 6 months. Bank records showing purchases at stores that didn't exist on any military base. Security footage of him at a Charlotte Hornets game last Tuesday, the same night he'd called his parents from Kandahar. "Mrs. Chen?" A bailiff appeared at the courthouse entrance. "Judge Martinez is ready for you." This was it. The moment that would either expose Marcus's elaborate deception or blow up in my face spectacularly. If I was wrong about any detail, if he had somehow covered his tracks better than I thought, I'd lose my children and probably face charges for making false accusations against a service member. But I knew I wasn't wrong. I'd triple-checked everything. I took a deep breath, thinking about Emma's laugh and Jake's tiny hand in mine, and walked toward the courthouse doors. Marcus was waiting inside, probably confident that his uniform and fabricated deployment records would protect him. He had no idea what was coming. The courthouse hallway stretched endlessly before me, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like angry wasps. Each step echoed off the marble floors as I made my way toward courtroom 3B, the manila folder growing heavier in my grip. "Sarah Chen?" "I'm Rebecca Martinez, your attorney." A sharp-dressed woman in her 40s extended her hand, her expression grim. "We need to talk before we go in there." My stomach dropped. "What's wrong?" She pulled me aside, lowering her voice. "Marcus's lawyer just filed an emergency motion. They're claiming you've been harassing his command with false accusations about his deployment status. They have a sworn affidavit from his commanding officer stating that Staff Sergeant Chen is currently on classified assignment overseas." The blood drained from my face. "That's impossible." "I have proof." "I know what you have," Rebecca interrupted. "But they're saying your evidence is fabricated. His CO is prepared to testify that any GPS data showing Marcus stateside is either doctored or from before his deployment. They're painting you as an unstable military spouse having a breakdown." Through the courtroom's glass doors, I could see Marcus sitting at the defendant's table in his dress uniform, ribbons gleaming under the harsh lights. He looked calm, confident, every inch the decorated soldier. Beside him sat his lawyer, a man I recognized from the news, James Hartwell, who specialized in defending military personnel. "There's more," Rebecca continued, her voice barely a whisper. "Judge Martinez just informed me that a representative from Marcus's unit will be present to verify his deployment status. If we're wrong about this, Sarah, you could be charged with filing false statements and interfering with military operations. That's federal prison time." My hands started shaking. Marcus had anticipated this. Somehow, he'd gotten his commanding officer to lie for him, or worse, maybe his CO was in on it. Military boys club protecting their own. "Mrs. Chen?" A voice behind me made me jump. I turned to see a tall man in civilian clothes, his bearing unmistakably military despite the suit. "I'm Colonel James Harrison, Staff Sergeant Chen's commanding officer. I understand there's been some confusion about Sergeant Chen's current assignment." Rebecca stepped protectively closer to me. "Colonel, with respect, we weren't expecting direct contact before the hearing." Colonel Harrison's smile was cold, professional. I felt it was important to clear this up quickly. "Mrs. Chen, your husband is currently on a classified mission that requires operational security. Any evidence suggesting otherwise puts both his safety and mission success at risk. I strongly advise you to reconsider these allegations." The threat was clear as crystal, wrapped in military courtesy and patriotic duty. They were closing ranks, and I was about to be crushed between them. "I understand your position, Colonel," I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. "But I have evidence that proves otherwise." His eyes hardened. "Be very careful, Mrs. Chen. False accusations against a deployed service member carry serious consequences. For everyone involved." As he walked away, Rebecca grabbed my arm. "Sarah, listen to me. This is bigger than we thought. If his entire chain of command is backing his story, we're not just fighting Marcus anymore. We're taking on the military itself." Through the glass, I watched Marcus turn and meet my eyes. The smirk on his face was subtle, barely visible, but I saw it. He thought he'd won already. My phone buzzed again. Another text from the private investigator, emergency. Call me now. Found something about the CO. The courtroom doors opened, and the bailiff called out, Chen versus Chen, Judge Martinez presiding. Everything was about to explode, and I was standing at ground zero. My fingers fumbled with my phone as I stepped into an empty conference room, Rebecca close behind me. The private investigator's number rang once before he picked up. Sarah, thank God. Listen carefully, your husband's CO, Colonel Harrison? He's not covering for Marcus out of some brotherhood loyalty. He's covering for himself. What do you mean? My voice was barely a whisper. I ran deeper background checks after you mentioned the commanding officer was getting involved. Harrison has been skimming from unit funds for 2 years. Marcus found out and has been blackmailing him. That's why he got approval for this fake deployment. Harrison had to sign off on it to keep Marcus quiet. The room spun around me. You have proof? Bank transfers, meeting locations, everything. Harrison's been funneling money through fake vendor contracts. Marcus has been getting a cut to stay silent. This goes way deeper than adultery, Sarah. We're talking fraud, extortion, conspiracy. Rebecca was watching my face, her expression growing more concerned by the second. What is it? She mouthed. How solid is this evidence? I asked the investigator. Solid enough that the FBI would be very interested. But Sarah, if we expose this in court today, you're not just destroying Marcus's career. You're taking down a full colonel and potentially exposing a military corruption scandal that could reach even higher. These people will fight back with everything they have. Through the conference room window, I could see more uniformed personnel arriving. 2 more officers I didn't recognize, both with serious expressions and briefcases. Marcus's family was huddled in the hallway, his mother crying into his father's shoulder. There's something else, the investigator continued. I found Marcus's girlfriend's apartment this morning. She's gone. Cleared out completely, like she was never there. Someone warned her. My blood ran cold. When? Had to be last night or early this morning. Professional job too, lease was terminated, forwarding address leads to a P.O. box that doesn't exist. Someone with resources made her disappear. Rebecca grabbed my arm. Sarah, we need to go in. Judge Martinez doesn't like delays. I have to decide right now, I whispered into the phone. Do I have enough to win? You have enough to blow this whole thing wide open, he replied. But once you light this fuse, there's no putting it out. These people will come after you with everything. Your character, your fitness as a mother, your mental state, they'll burn your life down to protect themselves. The bailiff appeared at the conference room door. Mrs. Chen? The judge is waiting. I looked at Rebecca, then at the manila folder in my hands. Inside wasn't just proof of Marcus's lies, it was evidence of a conspiracy that reached deep into the military hierarchy. Evidence that could send multiple people to federal prison. Sarah, the investigator's voice crackled through the phone. What do you want to do? Through the window, I saw Marcus checking his watch, still confident, still smirking. Colonel Harrison was speaking quietly with the other officers, their faces grim and determined. They thought they had this locked down. They thought one desperate military wife couldn't possibly threaten their carefully constructed lies. They had no idea that I'd stumbled onto something much bigger than a cheating husband. Send everything to my attorney's secure email, I said finally. All of it. The corruption evidence, the blackmail proof, everything. Sarah, Rebecca whispered urgently. We have to go. Now. I ended the call and looked at her. Rebecca, what I'm about to tell you is going to change everything about this case. The courtroom doors were waiting. So was the truth. I slid into my seat at the plaintiff's table, my heart hammering against my ribs as Rebecca's laptop chimed with incoming emails from the investigator. She was scrolling through them rapidly, her face growing paler with each document. Jesus Christ, she breathed, then immediately looked around to make sure no one heard her. Sarah, this is massive. Judge Martinez entered, and we all rose. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe early 50s, with steel gray hair and sharp eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. As we sat back down, I noticed 2 more people slip into the back of the courtroom, a man and woman in dark suits who definitely weren't family members. Your Honor, Marcus's attorney James Hartwell stood immediately. Before we begin, I'd like to address the serious allegations Mrs. Chen has been making against my client, a decorated service member currently on deployment. Objection, Rebecca said, rising. Mr. Hartwell is making statements, not presenting evidence. Sustained. Mr. Hartwell, please proceed with your opening statement and say the commentary. But before Hartwell could continue, Colonel Harrison stood up from the gallery. Your Honor, if I may. As Staff Sergeant Chen's commanding officer, I feel it's important that the court understand the sensitive nature of his current assignment. Judge Martinez frowned. Colonel, unless you're a witness being called to testify, please remain seated. Actually, Your Honor, Hartwell interjected smoothly, we'd like to call Colonel Harrison as our first witness to establish the facts about Sergeant Chen's deployment status. My stomach clenched as Harrison strode to the witness stand. This was it, they were going all in with their fabricated story, betting that his rank and authority would be enough to shut down any questions. Rebecca leaned over and whispered, the corruption evidence is solid, but if I bring it up without proper foundation, Martinez could declare a mistrial or worse, sanction us for irrelevant character assassination. As Harrison was sworn in, I caught Marcus's eye again. But this time, something was different. He looked nervous. His confident smirk had faded, replaced by something that looked almost like panic. Colonel Harrison, Hartwell began, can you confirm Staff Sergeant Chen's current assignment status? Yes, sir. Sergeant Chen has been deployed to Forward Operating Base Chapman in Afghanistan for the past 6 months on a classified reconnaissance mission. And has he been stateside at all during this period? Absolutely not. Any suggestion otherwise would be. Your Honor. The courtroom doors burst open, and a man in a military police uniform strode in. I apologize for the interruption, but this is urgent. Judge Martinez looked furious. Who are you, and what is the meaning of this? Major Robert Klein, Criminal Investigation Division. Your Honor, I need to speak with Colonel Harrison immediately regarding an ongoing investigation. The blood drained from Harrison's face. In the gallery, the 2 people in dark suits, who I now realized had to be federal agents, were already moving toward the front of the courtroom. Your Honor, Rebecca stood up, her voice carrying new confidence. In light of this development, we request an immediate recess to review new evidence that's just come to our attention. Marcus was no longer looking confident. He was whispering frantically to his attorney, his face flushed red. Hartwell looked like a man watching his carefully constructed case collapse in real time. What new evidence? Judge Martinez demanded. Rebecca lifted a thick stack of papers that had just finished printing from her portable printer. Bank records, communication intercepts, and financial documents that suggest this case involves significantly more than a custody dispute, Your Honor. Colonel Harrison tried to stand up from the witness chair, but Major Klein stepped forward. Sir, I need you to remain seated. The courtroom erupted into whispers and commotion. Marcus's family looked confused and terrified. His mother was clutching his father's arm, both of them staring at their son like they'd never seen him before. Judge Martinez banged her gavel. Order. Everyone remained seated. She looked at the chaos unfolding before her bench, then directly at me. Mrs. Chen, I have a feeling this case is about to become much more complicated than a simple custody hearing. She had no idea how right she was. The 30-minute recess felt like 30 hours. Rebecca and I were sequestered in a small conference room with Major Klein and the two federal agents, who'd introduced themselves as FBI Special Agents Morrison and Torres. The walls felt like they were closing in as documents spread across the table like evidence of a crime I'd accidentally uncovered. Mrs. Chen, Agent Morrison said, her voice sharp and professional, we need you to understand the gravity of what you've stumbled into. This investigation has been ongoing for 8 months. Your husband and Colonel Harrison are part of a much larger network. My mouth went dry. Larger how? Military contract fraud, money laundering, falsified deployment records to cover financial crimes. We estimate at least $2 million has been siphoned through fake overseas operations. Agent Torres pulled out a tablet, showing me photographs I recognized, Marcus at restaurants, hotels, meeting with people I'd never seen before. We've been tracking your husband's movements as part of this investigation. His fake deployment wasn't just about hiding an affair. Rebecca was frantically taking notes. So Sarah's evidence about his location corroborates everything we already knew, Major Klein confirmed. But Mrs. Chen, by bringing this to civil court, you forced our hand. We weren't ready to move yet. The implications hit me like a freight train. You mean I've compromised your investigation? Not compromised, Agent Morrison said carefully. Accelerated. Colonel Harrison is panicking right now, probably making calls to warn his co-conspirators. We're having to execute arrest warrants earlier than planned. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You have no idea what you've started. Drop this now or your children will pay the price. Agent Torres saw my face go white and held out her hand. Show me. As she read the message, her expression darkened. Mrs. Chen, we need to discuss protective measures for you and your children immediately. Protective measures? My voice cracked. What are you talking about? The people your husband has been working with don't just steal money, Major Klein said grimly. 3 whistleblowers in similar cases have had accidents in the past 2 years. House fires, car crashes, things that look random but aren't. The room started spinning. I thought I was fighting for custody of my children. Instead, I'd accidentally exposed a criminal conspiracy that apparently killed people to stay hidden. I just wanted proof that he wasn't deployed, I whispered. I just wanted to protect my kids from his lies. And now we need to protect all of you from something much worse, Agent Morrison said. She turned to Major Klein. How much longer can we keep this hearing going before they realize we're coordinating? Not long. Harrison's attorney is probably already filing motions to dismiss based on the military investigation. Judge Martinez is going to want answers. Rebecca looked up from her legal pad. What exactly are you asking Sarah to do here? Testify, Agent Torres said simply. Tell the truth about everything you discovered. Your evidence gives us grounds to arrest Harrison and Marcus right here, right now, before they can warn anyone else. My hands were shaking. And if I refuse? Then we lose our best chance to stop this network, and your husband probably walks away from both the criminal charges and the custody case, Major Klein said bluntly. Military corruption cases are notoriously hard to prosecute without insider testimony. And if I do testify? The 3 officers exchanged looks. Finally, Agent Morrison spoke. Then we can guarantee your safety and your children's safety, but you'll likely be in witness protection for months, possibly years, while we dismantle this operation. A knock at the door interrupted us. The bailiff's voice called through, Judge Martinez wants everyone back in 5 minutes. Rebecca started gathering papers. Sarah, you have about 4 minutes to decide whether you want to be a witness in what could be the biggest military corruption case in decades. Through the conference room window, I could see Marcus pacing in the hallway, his phone pressed to his ear, his face red with anger. Colonel Harrison was nowhere to be seen, probably already in federal custody. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a photo, Emma and Jake at their daycare, taken from outside the fence. The message was simple, beautiful children. Would hate for anything to happen to them. Agent Torres saw the photo and immediately started barking orders into her radio. We need units at Little Stars Daycare immediately. Code Red Protection Detail. The bailiff knocked again, more urgently this time. I looked at Rebecca, then at the federal agents who were promising to protect my family from people who apparently had no problem threatening children. What do I say when we go back in there? Agent Morrison's smile was grim. You tell the truth, Mrs. Chen. All of it. The courtroom felt different when we filed back in, charged with an electric tension that made the air itself seem dangerous. Marcus was back at his table, but his confident posture had crumbled. His hands were clenched so tightly his knuckles had gone white, and he kept glancing toward the exits like a cornered animal looking for escape routes. Colonel Harrison was conspicuously absent. Your Honor, James Hartwell stood immediately, his usual smooth demeanor replaced by barely controlled panic. I'm requesting an immediate continuance due to the unexpected military investigation that's apparently denied. Judge Martinez cut him off sharply. Mr. Hartwell, your client and his commanding officer came here today to testify about his deployment status. We're going to get to the bottom of that, regardless of whatever else is happening. She turned to Rebecca. Ms. Martinez, I believe you mentioned new evidence? This was it. The moment everything would either vindicate me or destroy what was left of my life. I could feel Agent Morrison's eyes on me from the back of the courtroom, could practically hear her unspoken reminder, tell the truth. All of it. Yes, Your Honor. We'd like to call Mrs. Sarah Chen to the stand. The walk to the witness stand felt like walking to my own execution. Marcus's family stared at me with a mixture of confusion and dawning horror. His mother was crying again, but this time I wondered if it was from grief rather than sympathy. As I was sworn in, my voice barely carried. The bailiff had to ask me to repeat I do loud enough for the court reporter. Mrs. Chen, Rebecca began, her tone gentle but firm, can you tell the court when you first suspected your husband was not actually deployed overseas? 3 months ago, I said, my voice stronger now. I received a credit card bill showing charges at local restaurants and gas stations while he was supposedly in Afghanistan. And what did you do with that information? I hired a private investigator. The courtroom stirred at this admission. I thought maybe it was identity theft or some kind of mistake. What did the investigator find? I took a deep breath, thinking of Emma and Jake, probably being picked up by federal agents right now and wondering why strangers were taking them to a safe place. This was for them. Everything I was about to say was to protect them. GPS evidence showing my husband has been in Charlotte for the past 6 months. Bank records proving he's been paying rent on an apartment downtown. Security footage of him at restaurants, sporting events, hotels. My voice grew steadier with each word. He was never deployed, Your Honor. He's been living 20 minutes away while I struggled to feed our children on reduced support payments meant for deployed military families. The murmur from the gallery was louder now. Marcus's brother David shot to his feet. This is insane. You're destroying a good man's reputation with lies. Mr. Chen, sit down or you'll be removed, Judge Martinez warned. Hartwell was whispering frantically with Marcus, who looked like he might throw up. Your Honor, these allegations are clearly the product of a disturbed individual seeking attention. Your Honor, Rebecca interrupted, pulling out a thick folder. We have photographs, GPS logs, bank statements, and witness testimony covering the past 6 months. Staff Sergeant Chen has not only committed adultery and fraud, but he's been using his fabricated deployment status to manipulate custody arrangements and family finances. Judge Martinez leaned forward. Mrs. Chen, these are very serious accusations. Are you prepared for the consequences if you're found to be lying under oath? Before I could answer, the courtroom doors opened again. Agent Morrison walked in, followed by 2 uniformed military police officers. Your Honor, Agent Morrison announced, her voice carrying the authority of the federal government, I have warrants for the arrest of Staff Sergeant Marcus Chen on charges of conspiracy, fraud, and money laundering in connection with an ongoing federal investigation. The explosion of voices was immediate. Marcus's family was shouting, his attorney was objecting, and Judge Martinez was banging her gavel repeatedly. But through it all, I heard Marcus himself, not shouting, not objecting, just a single word whispered with the desperation of a man whose entire world was collapsing. Sarah. For the first time in 6 months, he was saying my name without lies attached to it. The handcuffs clicked around Marcus's wrists with a sound that seemed to echo through the stunned courtroom. His dress uniform, with all those ribbons and decorations he'd been so proud of, now looked like a costume from a play that had gone horribly wrong. This is a mistake, his mother screamed from the gallery, lunging forward before his father caught her arm. My son is a hero. He's been serving his country while this woman has been plotting against him. Agent Morrison's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Mrs. Chen, Staff Sergeant Chen is being charged with conspiracy to commit fraud, money laundering, and violation of the Uniform Code of Military Justice. This is in connection with a multi-million-dollar embezzlement scheme involving falsified deployment records. Judge Martinez had given up banging her gavel and was simply waiting for the storm to pass. Marcus caught my eye as the MPs flanked him, and for a split second, I saw something I'd never seen before, genuine fear. Sarah, he said, his voice barely audible over the commotion, you don't understand what you've done. These people, they're not going to just let this go. Before I could respond, James Hartwell was on his feet, his smooth courtroom demeanor completely shattered. Your Honor, this is clearly a coordinated attack on my client's character timed to influence custody proceedings. I demand. Mr. Hartwell, Judge Martinez's voice carried the weight of 20 years on the bench, your client is being arrested by federal agents in my courtroom. I think we're well beyond concerns about timing. Agent Morrison approached the bench. Your Honor, we need Mrs. Chen and her children in protective custody immediately. The organization her husband was involved with has a history of retaliating against witnesses. My blood turned to ice. What kind of retaliation? Marcus's head snapped up at my question, and I saw something new in his expression, not just fear for himself, but what looked like genuine panic for me and the kids. Sarah, listen to me, he said urgently as the MP started to move him toward the exit. Colonel Harrison wasn't the top of this. There are people higher up, people with resources. You need to. That's enough, one of the MPs cut him off, but Marcus kept talking as they dragged him away. Check the safe deposit box. Bank of America on Trade Street. Box 347, Emma's birthday is the code. There's evidence that proves. The courtroom doors slammed shut behind them, cutting off his words and leaving an eerie silence in their wake. Rebecca was already packing up her papers with shaking hands. Sarah, we need to go. Now. But I couldn't move. The magnitude of what had just happened was hitting me like a tsunami. This morning I thought I was fighting for custody of my children. Now I was apparently a federal witness in a conspiracy case, my kids were in protective custody, and my husband, whatever else he was, had just tried to give me information that might get us all killed. Judge Martinez's voice broke through my paralysis. Mrs. Chen, given the extraordinary circumstances that have come to light, I'm postponing these custody proceedings indefinitely. However, I want to be very clear about something. I looked up at her, my vision blurring with unshed tears. Whatever your husband has done, whatever crimes he may have committed, you've shown remarkable courage in bringing the truth to light. Your children are lucky to have a mother willing to fight for them, regardless of the cost. Agent Morrison appeared at my elbow. Mrs. Chen, we really need to go. There's a secure facility where you can be reunited with your children, but we need to move now. As I stood to leave, I caught sight of Marcus's family in the gallery. His mother was sobbing into her hands, his father staring at nothing, his brother David looking at me with pure hatred. This isn't over, David mouthed silently. I was starting to realize he was absolutely right. The safe house looked like every generic suburban home in America, beige siding, small front yard, the kind of place you'd drive past without a second glance. That was probably the point. Agent Morrison led me up the walkway, her hand resting casually on her concealed weapon in a way that made my stomach clench. Emma. Jake. I called out as we entered, and two small bodies crashed into my legs with the force of tiny missiles. Mommy. Emma's face was streaked with tears. The nice people said we had to go on a special trip, but I want to go home. Jake, barely 2 and confused by everything, just clung to my leg and refused to let go. Over their heads, I saw Agent Torres approaching with a grim expression. Mrs. Chen, we need to talk, she said quietly. There have been developments since we left the courthouse. My arms tightened around my children. What kind of developments? The safe deposit box your husband mentioned? We sent a team to check it out. She glanced meaningfully at Emma and Jake. Perhaps we could speak privately? A woman I didn't recognize, young, kind-faced, wearing civilian clothes, stepped forward. Hi there, she said to my kids with practiced cheerfulness. I'm Agent Kelly, but you can call me Miss Sarah. Would you like to see the really cool playroom we have here? I heard there might be some video games. Emma perked up despite her tears, and even Jake seemed intrigued. As they followed Agent Kelly deeper into the house, Torres led me to what looked like a dining room that had been converted into a command center. Laptops, communication equipment, and stacks of documents covered every surface. Your husband was telling the truth about the evidence, Torres began without preamble. The safe deposit box contained financial records going back 3 years. This conspiracy involves at least 12 military personnel across 4 different bases, plus civilian contractors and Defense Department officials. I sank into a chair, overwhelmed. How much money are we talking about? Conservative estimate? $15 million. She pulled out a tablet, showing me photographs of documents I couldn't begin to understand. Fake overseas operations, ghost personnel on deployment rosters, equipment purchases that never happened. Your husband wasn't just hiding an affair, Sarah. He was a key player in one of the largest military fraud schemes we've seen. My phone, which Agent Morrison had returned to me after checking it for security, buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Saw the news. You look good on camera. So do the kids. Torres saw my face go white and immediately took the phone. Her jaw tightened as she read the message. We need to move you again, she said, already reaching for her radio. Again? We just got here. Sarah, listen to me carefully. In the past 2 hours, someone leaked your name to the media. There are news vans outside your house, reporters calling it the military wife whistleblower case. Your face is on 3 different news websites. The room started spinning. Through the window, I could see Emma and Jake in the backyard, playing on a swing set under the watchful eye of Agent Kelly, blissfully unaware that their lives had been turned completely upside down. There's something else, Torres continued, her voice dropping even lower. Colonel Harrison was found dead in his cell an hour ago. Apparent suicide, but the timing is suspicious. The word suicide hit me like a physical blow. Oh God. This is my fault. If I hadn't. Stop. Torres grabbed my shoulders, forcing me to look at her. This is not your fault. Harrison made his choices long before you found that credit card bill. But his death means the people behind this are cleaning house. And right now, you and your children are the biggest threat to their operation. From the backyard, I could hear Emma's laughter as she pushed Jake on the swing. Normal sounds from a life that no longer existed. What happens now? I whispered. Torres's expression was answer enough. We were running out of safe places to hide. The secure phone rang at 3 a.m., jolting me awake from the first real sleep I'd managed in days. Emma and Jake were curled up on either side of me in the narrow safe house bed, and I carefully extracted myself without waking them before answering. Mrs. Chen, this is Agent Morrison. We have a problem. My blood turned to ice. What now? Someone accessed your husband's military personnel file 2 hours ago using high-level security clearance. They downloaded everything, your address history, family information, even your children's medical records from the base hospital. I gripped the phone tighter, watching Emma's peaceful face in the dim light filtering through the blackout curtains. Who is that kind of access? That's what we're trying to figure out. But Sarah, whoever did this also accessed the witness protection database. They know you're under federal protection, and they know the general area where we've relocated you. The walls of the small bedroom felt like they were closing in. Are we safe here? For now, but we need to move again. Tomorrow morning. I'm sorry, I know this is hard on the kids. Agent Morrison, I interrupted, something cold and determined settling in my chest. I can't keep running forever. My children can't live like this. I understand, but until we identify who's leaking information from inside the military. Then find them. My voice was harder than I'd ever heard it. Marcus gave you that safe deposit box. Use whatever's in there to end this. There was a long pause. Sarah, there's something else. The contents of that box, your husband documented everything. Names, dates, bank account numbers, recorded phone calls. He was building an insurance policy against his co-conspirators. Insurance policy? If anything happened to him, all of it was supposed to go to the FBI automatically. He didn't trust the people he was working with, so he was protecting himself by collecting evidence against them. I felt a strange twist of emotion, not quite respect for Marcus, but something approaching understanding. Even in the middle of betraying our family, he'd been trying to protect us from something worse. How many people are we talking about? I asked. The evidence points to a network spanning 3 military installations and at least 6 high-ranking officers. Plus civilian contractors, Defense Department personnel, and what appears to be organized crime connections for money laundering. Jake stood beside me, mumbling something about wanting his daddy. My heart clenched, knowing that after everything came out in court, the daddy he remembered might not exist anymore. Agent Morrison, I want to make a deal. What kind of deal? I'll testify against all of them. Every single person Marcus identified. But I want guarantees, real ones. New identities for me and my children, relocation assistance, protection until every last one of these people is behind bars. Sarah, that could take years. Then it takes years. I looked at my sleeping children, thinking about the message with their photo, about Colonel Harrison's convenient death, about the reporters camped outside our old house. These people threatened my babies. They made my children afraid. I'm done running and hiding. The kind of testimony you're talking about would be unprecedented. You'd be the key witness in potentially dozens of federal cases. Good. I surprised myself with how calm I sounded. Because I want every single person who thought they could intimidate a mother protecting her children to learn exactly how wrong they were. Agent Morrison was quiet for a long moment. Finally, she spoke. I'll make the calls. But Sarah, once we go down this path, there's no going back. You'll be in this fight until the very end. Through the bedroom window, I could see the first hints of dawn on the horizon. Somewhere out there, powerful people were probably making plans to silence me permanently. They had no idea who they were dealing with. The federal courthouse in downtown Charlotte looked like a fortress when we arrived at 6 a.m., surrounded by concrete barriers and enough armed security to stop a small army. Agent Morrison had insisted on the early arrival to avoid media attention, but I could already see news vans setting up across the street. Remember, she said as we walked through multiple security checkpoints, today is just your preliminary testimony. We're establishing the foundation of the case against the remaining conspirators. My hands were sweating as I clutched the folder containing copies of everything from Marcus's safe deposit box. 3 weeks had passed since that night in the safe house, 3 weeks of reviewing documents, identifying faces and photographs, and learning just how deep this conspiracy went. Mrs. Chen, a new voice called out, and I turned to see a man in an expensive suit approaching with a predatory smile. Richard Blackwood, attorney for General Morrison. I was hoping we could have a quick word before. Absolutely not, Agent Morrison stepped between us immediately. Mr. Blackwood, you know better than to approach a federal witness directly. General Morrison. The name sent a chill down my spine. According to Marcus's evidence, he was the highest-ranking officer involved in the scheme, a 2-star general who'd been using his position to approve fake overseas operations for years. Of course, Blackwood said smoothly, but his eyes never left mine. I simply wanted to express the general's sympathy for everything you've been through. Losing a husband to criminal charges, having your children displaced, it must be devastating to realize how deeply you've been deceived. The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Your husband lied to you about everything. How do you know he wasn't lying about us too? Mr. Blackwood, Agent Morrison's voice carried a warning edge. Walk away. Now. As he retreated, I felt my confidence shake for the first time in weeks. What if Marcus had lied about the evidence? What if this was all some elaborate setup to protect himself by throwing bigger fish to the prosecutors? Don't, Agent Morrison said, reading my expression. We've verified everything independently. Your husband's evidence is solid. But as we entered the secure conference room where I'd be giving my testimony, I noticed something that made my blood freeze. Sitting in the observer section was David, Marcus's brother, wearing a military uniform I didn't recognize. He shouldn't have been there. Civilians weren't allowed in preliminary federal testimony sessions. Agent Morrison followed my gaze and immediately spoke into a radio. I need background on the observer in section 2, military uniform, brown hair. The response came back quickly, and I watched her face change. That's Captain David Chen, assigned to military intelligence at Fort Bragg. He has legitimate clearance to observe this testimony. Marcus's brother was military intelligence. In all the years I'd known the family, he told us he worked in communications. Now he was sitting 20 feet away from where I was about to testify against a conspiracy that apparently reached into the highest levels of the military. Agent Morrison, I whispered urgently, Marcus's family didn't know about his real job. David always said he did communications work, not intelligence. Her expression darkened as the implications hit her. Mrs. Chen, I need you to think carefully. Has David ever asked you specific questions about Marcus's deployment? About your investigation? About what evidence you found? My mind raced back through conversations, family dinners, phone calls after Marcus's arrest. David had been so supportive, so concerned about the children, so eager to help with anything I needed. Oh God, I breathed. He called me last week. Asked if I was holding up okay and whether the federal agents had explained everything to me. I thought he was just being caring, but he was intelligence gathering, Agent Morrison finished grimly. He's been reporting back on everything you know, everything we've told you, every move we've made. The betrayal hit harder than anything Marcus had done. At least my husband had been motivated by greed and lust. His brother had been systematically gathering information to help the people who threatened my children. Ma'am, Agent Morrison's radio crackled, we've got a problem. Someone just leaked Mrs. Chen's testimony schedule to the press. There are protesters gathering outside, and we're getting reports of suspicious vehicles in the area. Through the conference room window, I could see David checking his phone, then looking directly at me with an expression I'd never seen before, cold, calculating, utterly without the warmth I thought I knew. Agent Morrison was already moving. We're aborting today's testimony. Mrs. Chen, we need to get you out of here now. But as we headed for the door, it opened to reveal 2 federal marshals with grim expressions. Agent Morrison, one of them said, we've got Emma and Jake Chen in protective custody at the safe house, but there's been a security breach. Someone attempted to breach the perimeter 30 minutes ago. The room spun around me. While I'd been worried about testifying, someone had been moving against my children. David was still watching me, and now he was smiling. The panic hit me like a physical force, my vision blurring as Agent Morrison grabbed my arm to steady me. My children, I whispered, the words barely audible. Are they hurt? Are they? They're safe, the marshal said quickly. The breach was unsuccessful. But Mrs. Chen, the attempt was coordinated with inside knowledge of our security protocols. Agent Morrison spun toward David, who was no longer bothering to hide his satisfied expression. Captain Chen, you're coming with us for questioning. I don't think so, David replied calmly, standing up and straightening his uniform. I have orders from my commanding officer to observe these proceedings and report back on any testimony that might compromise ongoing military intelligence operations. What operations? Morrison demanded. David's smile was cold as winter. Classified operations that your investigation is threatening to expose. Operations that are vital to national security. He looked directly at me. Sarah, you have no idea what you've stumbled into. This goes so far beyond Marcus's little side business. Before anyone could respond, Agent Morrison's radio erupted with chatter. All units, we have multiple vehicles approaching the courthouse perimeter. Federal plates, but not on our authorized list. Through the window, I could see black SUVs pulling up to the courthouse steps. Men in dark suits were getting out, moving with military precision toward the building entrances. Who are they? I asked, but Agent Morrison was already pushing me toward a different exit. I don't know, and I don't want to find out, she said grimly. Mrs. Chen, we're initiating emergency extraction protocol. David laughed, the sound echoing off the conference room walls. You can't run forever, Sarah. And you can't protect those children by hiding. The only way this ends is if you stop talking about things you don't understand. Things like what? I demanded, anger overriding my fear. Like the $15 million your brother and his friend stole? Like the soldiers who died because equipment money was diverted to offshore accounts? Like military operations designed to catch foreign agents selling weapons to terrorist organizations, David shot back. Like undercover assignments that required fake deployment records to maintain operational security. Like classified missions that your husband was supposed to keep secret but decided to document because he got greedy. The words hit me like a slap. You're saying Marcus was undercover? I'm saying your precious evidence doesn't tell the whole story, David replied. Some of those fake deployments were covers for operations that saved American lives. Some of that stolen money was funding anti-terrorism work that couldn't go through official channels. Agent Morrison stepped between us. Even if that were true, Captain, it doesn't justify threatening civilians or attempting to breach federal protective custody. Doesn't it? David's expression hardened. When those civilians are about to expose operations that took 3 years to build? When their testimony could get undercover agents killed in the field? My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Mommy, when are you coming home? The new babysitters won't let us call you. The blood drained from my face. That wasn't from Emma, she couldn't text yet. Someone else had sent that message. Agent Morrison saw my expression and grabbed the phone. Her face went white as she read the message, then immediately spoke into her radio. Command, I need immediate verification that our assets are secure at the primary location. The response came back filled with static and tension. Agent Morrison, we've lost contact with the safe house team. Last check-in was 40 minutes ago. My legs gave out, and I collapsed into the nearest chair. While David had been distracting us with talk of classified operations and national security, someone had been moving against my children. Where are they? I whispered, looking up at David with pure hatred. Where are my babies? His expression had changed again, the cold satisfaction replaced by what looked almost like genuine concern. Sarah, I swear to you, this wasn't supposed to happen. The children were never supposed to be. The conference room door burst open, and 3 men in black tactical gear entered, their faces hidden behind masks. Mrs. Chen, one of them said in a voice that was calm, professional, and absolutely terrifying, you're coming with us. The tactical team moved with military precision, but Agent Morrison was faster. Her weapon was drawn before they'd fully entered the room, and she positioned herself between me and the masked men with practiced efficiency. Federal agents, she barked. Identify yourselves immediately. Stand down, Agent Morrison, the lead figure said calmly, pulling out an official-looking document. We're operating under National Security Directive 4-7 Alpha. Mrs. Chen is being transferred to a secure military facility for her protection. Bullshit, Morrison replied without lowering her weapon. There's no such thing as a national security override on federal witness protection. Behind the masks, I caught a glimpse of eyes that were cold, calculating, utterly without mercy. These weren't federal agents or military personnel. These were the people Marcus had been so afraid of, the ones who'd made Colonel Harrison disappear. David stepped forward, his earlier smugness replaced by genuine alarm. Wait, this wasn't part of the plan. You said you just wanted to relocate them, not. Plans change, Captain, the leader replied without taking his eyes off Morrison. Your brother's wife has become more of a liability than anticipated. The admission hung in the air like a death sentence. David had been working with them, but even he hadn't realized how far they were willing to go. His face went ashen as the implications hit him. Agent Morrison, my voice was surprisingly steady despite the terror coursing through my veins. The safe house communication blackout. It started exactly when David made his phone call. Morrison's jaw tightened. Captain Chen, you want to explain how your family check-in call coincided with our security breach? David's military composure was cracking. They said they just needed to know the timeline for Sarah's testimony. They said it was about protecting ongoing operations. David, I said, looking directly at Marcus's brother, where are Emma and Jake? Before he could answer, one of the tactical team members spoke into a throat mic. Package is secured. Ready for extraction to secondary location. Morrison's radio crackled with urgent chatter. All units, we have confirmation that the safe house has been compromised. No casualties, but the primary assets are missing. Missing. Not safe, not relocated. Missing. The rage that flooded through me was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. These people had taken my 4-year-old and my 2-year-old babies to force me into silence. They'd used David's family connections to get close to us, exploited his military clearance to track our movements, and now they had my children. You want to know what evidence I have? I said, my voice carrying across the tension-filled room. Marcus didn't just document the financial crimes. He recorded meetings, photographed classified documents being sold to foreign contacts, and identified weapons shipments that were diverted to private buyers. The lead tactical team member's posture shifted slightly, the first sign of uncertainty I'd seen from him. That's right, I continued, my voice growing stronger. Marcus wasn't just stealing money. He was documenting treason. And every piece of evidence is already in the hands of not just the FBI, but military intelligence, the CIA, and the State Department. It was a bluff, but a calculated one. Marcus had been paranoid enough to create the insurance policy in the safe deposit box. Maybe he'd been smart enough to create multiple copies. Agent Morrison caught on immediately. Mrs. Chen is correct. The evidence has been distributed through multiple agencies as a security measure. David was staring at me with a mixture of horror and what might have been respect. Sarah, you don't understand. If that information gets out, it won't just destroy careers. People will die. People like Emma and Jake? I shot back. Because right now, those are the only people I care about. The tactical team leader was speaking urgently into his radio, probably reporting that their plan to silence me quietly had just become exponentially more complicated. Agent Morrison pressed her advantage. Gentlemen, you have about 30 seconds to release those children before this becomes an international incident. Through the conference room window, I could see more black SUVs arriving, but these had federal plates I recognized from our convoy. The cavalry was coming, but I wasn't sure it would be in time. The standoff stretched for what felt like hours but was probably only seconds. Agent Morrison kept her weapon trained on the tactical team while they spoke in rapid, hushed tones into their radios. I could hear sirens in the distance, backup was coming, but would it arrive before these people decided to cut their losses? Mrs. Chen, the team leader said finally, his voice carrying a note of resignation, you need to understand that your husband's evidence implicates people who've spent their entire careers protecting this country. Good people who made difficult choices. Good people don't kidnap children, I replied, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. Good people don't threaten mothers to cover up their crimes. David stepped closer, his military bearing cracking under the weight of what he'd helped set in motion. Sarah, I swear I didn't know they would take Emma and Jake. They told me they just needed to relocate you somewhere more secure while the investigation played out. Captain Chen, Agent Morrison said without taking her eyes off the tactical team, if you want any chance of redemption, now would be the time to start helping instead of making excuses. Through the window, I could see the federal backup vehicles surrounding the black SUVs. Whatever operation these people had planned was falling apart in real time. The team leader's radio crackled with an incoming transmission. I couldn't make out the words, but his body language shifted immediately, from controlled aggression to barely contained panic. What's wrong? I demanded. What's happening? Ma'am, Agent Morrison's radio came alive with her colleague's voice. We've got a situation developing at Fort Bragg. Multiple arrests in progress, including General Morrison and 3 other high-ranking officers. It looks like someone triggered a massive coordinated takedown. My heart stopped. Does that mean? Agent Torres is en route to your location with the Chin children, the voice continued. They were recovered from a military facility approximately 20 minutes ago. Both children are unharmed and asking for their mother. The relief hit me so hard I had to grab the conference table to stay upright. Emma and Jake were safe. Whatever else happened, my babies were coming back to me. The tactical team leader was backing toward the door, clearly recognizing that their operation had failed spectacularly. This isn't over, he said to Agent Morrison. The people we work for have long memories. So does the federal government, Morrison replied coldly. And we have longer reach. David was staring at his phone with a stricken expression. They're arresting my commanding officer, he whispered. My entire unit is being investigated. David, I said, and he looked up at me with eyes that suddenly looked very young and very scared. You still have a choice. You can keep protecting people who were willing to hurt children, or you can help us make sure this never happens to another family. Before he could respond, the conference room door opened to reveal Agent Torres leading Emma and Jake by the hand. My daughter was clutching her favorite stuffed rabbit, and my son was sucking his thumb, something he only did when he was frightened. Mommy. Emma broke free and ran toward me, Jake close behind. As I knelt to catch them both in my arms, breathing in their familiar scent of apple juice and playground dirt, I heard David's voice behind me. Agent Morrison, he said quietly, I'd like to make a deal. I have information about military personnel in 4 different states who were involved in this operation. And I know where they keep their real financial records. The children were safe. The conspiracy was unraveling. And for the first time in months, I could finally breathe again. But as Emma whispered in my ear that the scary man had asked lots of questions about Daddy's computer, I realized our ordeal was far from over. 6 months after the courthouse confrontation, I thought we'd finally found peace in our new life in Portland. Emma had started kindergarten, Jake was thriving in daycare, and our new identities felt almost natural now. The Federal Witness Protection Program had given us everything they'd promised, new names, new histories, and the promise that the Chin family nightmare was behind us. Then I found the surveillance photos slipped under our apartment door. High-resolution images of Emma getting off the school bus. Jake playing at the daycare playground. Me grocery shopping at the local market. Someone had been watching us for weeks, documenting our routines, learning our new life down to the smallest detail. The accompanying note was brief, the trial start next month. Remember what happens to families who testify against patriots. My hands shook as I called Agent Morrison's secure number, but it went straight to voicemail. Same with Agent Torres. The backup contact number I'd memorized connected to a recording saying the line had been disconnected. Something was very wrong. Emma looked up from her coloring book as I frantically dialed the witness protection emergency line. Mommy, why do you look scared? I'm not scared, baby, I lied, listening to the phone ring endlessly with no answer. Just making some grown-up calls. But I was terrified. The federal trials were scheduled to begin in 3 weeks, with my testimony as the cornerstone of the prosecution's case against 12 military personnel, including General Morrison. My sealed testimony from 6 months ago had already helped secure plea bargains from several lower-level conspirators, but the big fish were going to trial. And now someone knew exactly where to find us. My laptop chimed with an encrypted email from an address I didn't recognize. Sarah, this is Agent Morrison. Do not trust any other federal contacts. There's been a security breach at the highest levels. Someone in the Justice Department has been feeding information to the defendants. Check the news about Fort Bragg incident yesterday. Call the number I'm about to send from a public phone only. Trust no one else. My blood ran cold as I pulled up news websites. The headlines were devastating. Key witness in military corruption case dies in apparent accident. Federal investigation compromised by security breach. Chen case prosecutors request emergency delay. Captain David Chen, Marcus's brother who had ultimately helped expose the full scope of the conspiracy, was dead. Car accident on a rainy night, lost control on a curve he'd driven 1,000 times. The same David who'd been scheduled to testify next week about the military intelligence connections to the fraud ring. Jake tugged on my sleeve. Mommy, there's a man outside looking at our windows. My heart stopped. I moved carefully to the living room window and peered through the blinds. A man in a dark coat stood across the street, not even pretending to hide his surveillance. When he saw me looking, he raised his hand in a casual wave. The message was clear: we know where you are, and we're not hiding anymore. My phone buzzed with a text from the number Morrison had promised to send: emergency extraction in 30 minutes. Pack only essentials. Black sedan, license plate starts with JFK. Driver will say Oregon rain is different than Carolina rain. Do not wait for verification. Go now. Emma was watching me with the too serious expression she developed since this whole nightmare began. Are we moving again, Mommy? I looked at my children, my brave, resilient children who'd already been through more upheaval than most adults experience in a lifetime. The safe life we'd built here was an illusion, and staying might get us all killed. But running meant they'd won. Running meant the people who'd stolen millions of dollars meant for soldier safety equipment would walk free. Running meant Marcus's death in federal prison 3 months ago would be meaningless. The man across the street was joined by 2 others, all watching our apartment with predatory patience. Time was up. I made a decision that surprised even me. Instead of packing, I opened my laptop and started a live video stream on every social media platform I could access. My name is Sarah Chen, and I'm supposed to testify next week in the largest military corruption case in decades, I said, looking directly into the camera. Right now, there are 3 men watching my apartment, waiting to make me disappear like they did my brother-in-law David. But I'm done running, and I'm done being silent. Emma and Jake looked confused by the sudden filming, but they stayed quietly in the background as I continued. 6 months ago, I discovered my husband was part of a conspiracy that stole $15 million meant for soldier safety equipment. Equipment that could have saved lives overseas. Instead, that money went into offshore accounts while our troops went without proper gear. The view count was climbing rapidly: 500, 1,000, 2,500 people watching live. The men outside my window work for people who think they're above the law because they wear uniforms or hold high positions. They've killed witnesses, threatened children, and corrupted the very institutions meant to protect us. My phone was ringing constantly now, unknown numbers, probably trying to shut me down. I ignored them all. General Morrison, I know you're watching this. Colonel Hayes, Lieutenant Colonel Price, all of you who thought you could silence me by threatening my babies. Here's my testimony, lit and uncensored, so the whole world can hear what you did. For the next 20 minutes, I laid out everything. Names, dates, bank account numbers, the locations of the hidden financial records David had told us about before his death. Every detail Marcus had documented, every crime the conspiracy had covered up. The live viewer count hit 50,000, then 100,000. Comments were flooding in from military families, veterans, reporters, members of Congress. Screenshots were being shared across platforms faster than anyone could contain them. The extraction vehicle just pulled up outside, I said, watching the black sedan arrive exactly as Morrison had promised. Agent Morrison, if that's really you, I'll be right down. If it's not. I looked directly into the camera. Then at least everyone will know exactly who was responsible for whatever happens next. Emma grabbed my hand as I closed the laptop. Mommy, are the bad people going to leave us alone now? Yes, baby, I said, and for the first time in months, I actually believed it. They can't hurt people who aren't hiding anymore. The 3 watchers across the street were gone, probably realizing that assassinating someone who'd just broadcast their crimes to 200,000 witnesses wasn't viable. The driver of the sedan gave the correct code phrase, and Agent Morrison's face appeared in the passenger seat, looking haggard but genuinely relieved. Sarah, she said as we climbed in, that was either the bravest or most insane thing I've ever witnessed. Both, I replied, buckling Jake into his car seat. But they can't threaten us with exposure anymore. Everyone already knows. My phone buzzed with a call from a number I recognized, the federal prosecutor's office. Mrs. Chen, this is District Attorney Williams. I just watched your broadcast. We're moving the trial date up to next week, and we're requesting maximum security. After what you just did, every defendant is going to want to take plea deals to avoid the public attention. Through the sedan's rear window, I watched our temporary Portland life disappear, but I wasn't sad anymore. We weren't running this time, we were moving forward, finally free from the shadows. Emma was already asleep against my shoulder when the prosecutor called back an hour later. Mrs. Chen? General Morrison just agreed to cooperate fully in exchange for a reduced sentence. Your live broadcast broke the case wide open. It's over. It was finally over.